Viable and well-coordinated collaboration at the subnational level provides opportunities to address the country's socio-economic challenges that individual entities are unable to solve on their own. Such strategic partnerships can potentially expand opportunities, create jobs, decongest our cities, increase productivity, and consequently help bridge the widening growth disparity among subnational entities and regions in the country. What are the key factors hindering the empowerment of subnationals in Nigeria? Plenary 4. Subnational Collaborations for Sustainable Economic Development. This plenary is interpreted for a virtual audience in Pidgin, Hausa, Igbo, French, and Yoruba. Follow the on-screen instructions to gain access. Welcome to this plenary session.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am delighted, actually, that the hall is full. I was going to make a comment about the placement of the subnational session, but that comment is now redundant because the hall is full. Obviously, a country is seen as one, but Nigeria, as a federation, 36 states that aggregate into the whole. And when we look at socio-economic indices for Nigeria as a country, when we look at economic development for Nigeria as a country, when we look at investments for Nigeria as a country, what we're actually looking at is the consolidation of all the magic that happens in the states. So it's important that we have this session where we get to share the challenges that investors face in dealing with the states, but also the reality of the support that they get. It is impossible for any business to be successful in Nigeria without, the active support of the states. Most policies are made at federal level, but where those policies interact with Nigerians, interact with investors, is actually at state level. The country is considered in the context of states, or we consider in the context of geopolitical zones, or we consider in the context of the parties that govern the states. But economic opportunities, economic development is completely ignorant of state lines, and magic will happen across state lines. When you talk about coloring between the lines, this is really, where it happens. So we have a chairman of session who is not here yet, but who will join us. So I'm going to leave room for the chairman to, he's supposed to set the context. I'll leave room for him when he arrives, to join us and set that context. But I'd like to start by identifying, some of, I'd like to start on a low and end on a high. The barriers that make it difficult for investments to happen at state level, or for business to happen at state level. But I'd like to, just frame a context, why this is important. We talk a lot about the ease of doing business, and I think it's important that it is easy for business to be conducted in Nigeria, yes, but on a state-by-state basis. Because as I mentioned, the country is an aggregation of what happens at state level. And when I served as Executive Secretary of NIPC, I often argued that although there's a correlation between ease of doing business and economic development, investors don't invest only because of ease of doing business. So it's important that we make it easier for business to happen, but it is more important that we make it easy for investors to actually invest in the states. So I'll share some statistics before we have the conversation. There's a strong correlation, however we look at it, between investment and economic development. And the numbers I will share relate to capital importation, where we've seen a decline from a high of $23.9 billion in 2019 to $9.65 billion in 2020 and $5.32 billion in 2022. So capital imported, numbers from NBS in 2022 translate only to a quarter of what we saw in Nigeria in 2019. And that already was insufficient for Nigeria's economic needs. If I'll start with His Excellency, the Governor of Nasarawa State, since you were seated first, Your Excellency. Thank you for joining us, Your Excellency. I know that you have an active economic plan for the state, but I also know that you work actively with your neighbors and with other states. So I wonder if you'll share with us, one, some of the things you're doing, but two, the feedback that you've got from investors about the challenges that they've had that informed the way you engage with investors and with your neighbors.
Thank you very much, moderator. I think first and foremost, for any state is to understand what exactly are you talking about when you say investment. Okay. Not every state is good for every kind of investment, so you must identify. So in our own strategy document, we identified in Nasarawa State 3 major areas: agriculture, oil and gas, and mining. Because those are the areas where we are very competitive and we have all the competitive advantages that we can think of. I just finished appearing in one of the panels where the chairman of Shell was actually there. And then earlier in the morning today, we kept talking about the big elephant in the room is FX. And I remember bringing this area of partnership with it. That today, OPEC has already given Nigeria a target of 1.8 million barrels to be produced. But Nigeria cannot even produce more than 1.4. And this is outside the condensate, which is about 200,000. So easily, we can solve one problem at the regions, and the issue of FX will completely eliminate. The reason being, if Nigeria can solve the problem of insecurity, which is by the various state government, then automatically you will produce your 1.8 easy, and you can produce your condensate 200,000, and automatically Nigeria will produce 2 million barrels. At a time like today, where there is the price of oil is so high, we can have enough to solve all the problems of this FX, and then FX will no longer be the elephant in the room. It will be indeed a rat in the room. So the main issues for us in Nasarawa State was the moment we identified our main areas is now to say that one is going to be security. So how do I collaborate on the areas of security with Benue, with Kaduna, with FCT, with Plateau? How do we resolve those issues? 2 months after I came to the office, the first thing I did was to visit the governor of Benue at the time, Governor Otom, in order for us to resolve that problems. And we did. Since I have very limited time, I won't be too elaborate in it. The same thing, I actually paid a similar visit to Governor Lalong at the time, in Plateau. Because if Plateau is not at peace, Benue is not at peace, then investors will be scared to come to Nasarawa, even if there is peace in Nasarawa State. So that's the main reason why I had to look at this collaboration with the neighbors to be able to do that. So we established those kind of relationships. We are able to resolve the issues of security at that level with the collaboration of the federal government. Nasarawa State being a state of solid minerals, And today, you know, we are talking about oil. Of course, we have oil exploration going on in Nasarawa State, where the first well has been drilled. But our main target is actually minerals. Today, lithium is the new oil. And with the way we are going on lithium, 3 companies in a very short time, one doing about 3,000 metric tons processing a day. Secondly, the other one is doing 4,500. The biggest one is going to be doing 18,000 metric tons a day. When you call these numbers, a lot of people actually have no idea what you are talking about. You know, so coming from the background of production and manufacturing, I can tell you the 18,000, take only 15,000 and say they are going to be operating at 15,000 metric tons per day. 15,000 is 500 trucks that they will be processing. Now, we wouldn't be able to do that if there is no security in all of those areas. So today, with the collaboration of the federal government, we've been able to establish that these companies are now going to start processing lithium in Nasarawa State. So, of course, in the area of agriculture, you know, I can see some of our partners here, because we developed a PPP arrangement, you know, based on the relationship with the various regions. Because if you have one policy in one state, and you have another contradictory policy in another state, it could also be a problem. So that's why the regions are very important. So Nigerian Governors Forum has been an excellent platform to have this collaboration. And of course, the National Economic Council, where the governors meet with the Vice President, with the federal government and so many other ministries, you know, CBN and the rest of that, has also been another very good one. You know, so I don't take all the time. I think these are the kinds of approach that Nasarawa State is having, and that's the reason why we are getting the kind of investors that we are getting into the state. Because our investors now, especially in the area of mining, are no longer illegal miners. You know, we told the federal government you have the right to give your cadastral license because the minerals belong to you. But fortunately, Mr. Federal Government, the land, according to land, belongs to the states. So we must have a relationship. So that's why we say, if you give a license to somebody to come and mine in Nasarawa State, what we are pleading with the investor is, please, when you mine, also process in Nasarawa State so that we can have the production right here in the state. So that's the kind of approach that we are getting.
I'm going to segue off the back of your fabulous comment to, she won't be surprised I'm coming to her, Nere. Because you are doing exactly what he wants, of sorts. But I'd like you to share, you know, your own perspective of how running Kian Smith Refinery, the states you operate in, and why, you know, many of us are unaware of the gold that is being refined in Nigeria.
Thank you. I'm going to try and answer your question, weaving in some of what His Excellency said and your earlier comment. The thing about geology, like you said, state boundaries don't stop things. The geology of pegmatites, where you're finding the lithium, they go, it's like a river. The geology, the schist belt, where the gold is, it's flowing. So we found, part of what we've discovered was, we were looking at gold, we're in gold exploration. Let me give you context. We're in gold exploration, we're in mining, we're in every part of the value chain for gold, all the way from the mine to refining, to retailing, to digital gold. However you want to say gold, we are there.
And jewelry.
We are there, we're in the gold value chain. Now, what is important about this story, I want to weave this story really into the context of this panel and states. We were in Osun State. We have mines there. We have some, we don't mine anymore presently in Niger because of insecurity, but we also have a mine in Niger, and we have a mine in Kano. However, we have buying centers in a lot of places. Niger State, FCT, Kogi, Kano. We have 9 buying, we're in many states. Anywhere there's gold, we're there. So literally, as you can imagine, we're dealing with a lot. But to tell you the context of how did all this work out and how are we dealing with this Yes, the federal government gives licenses for mining, but you see the whole thing about the value chain, developing the value chain, we were pioneering a lot because we found ourselves in areas where there was no policy. And how do we move this forward? And we really have to thank the federal government as well, the ERGP in 2018. They were very instrumental in putting pressure on the Ministry of Mines and Steel to issue a refinery license. Nothing stopped them, but I think it had never been done. So when this happened, even in trying to put the refinery as well in Ogun State, I don't want to tell bad stories, but we're not in Ogun State. We're now working out of the free trade zone in Lagos, the airport, for many reasons as well, states. What I will say that was very interesting about all of this is we came up with 9 things we've seen in our work, because all this work wove together with our work in also incubating with the Kaduna State Government, Kaduna Mining Development Company. In this gold work, it's beyond where you are. You have to follow the mineral. And the mineral, you're in Oshun, you're going to cross and find yourself in Oyo. If you're tracing the vein, you're now going to have to start dealing with different things. And for us in gold, we ended up even into what we call Gold West Africa, because we saw that you couldn't deal with gold even in Nigeria without dealing with the whole of West Africa. A lot of the data we found is that a lot of gold is actually flowing into Nigeria. It's flowing in from Ghana. Togo and Benin Republic, that produce no gold, are the largest exporters of gold in West Africa. So when you look at all this, you're already seeing that there's collaboration. We had to start collaborating with Burkina Faso. We had to start collaborating with Senegal. So the same thing for us here. There was no way to make any progress without dealing with the states. What is, to also come back to this about the successes and the story. The 9 things we discovered were the information, the initiation or the initiative, and the innovation. If there was no information, what were you going to start? You needed that information, and then the innovation came. But where there's infrastructure and there's industry and institution, it's easy. In our case, we were dealing with a lot of, policy was lacking, infrastructure was lacking, industry, some had gone comatose, some had to be revived, institution, still none that just deals with gold per se. So these were the struggles, but where we found success is when you could find identity or someone who would identify with this, and influence, and incubation. So in all this, I want to highlight Kaduna. Kaduna is part of our story, but also Kaduna Mining Development Company, because we were working with Kaduna, and the governor at the time, he identified with this for Kaduna State. He incubated this thing, he put his influence there, and now I believe that Kaduna Mining Development Company, then it was Osun State, but I think Kaduna Mining Development Company now as a state venture in mining has gone further than anyone else. I think in a few weeks, they will be commissioning a lithium processing plant. So this whole story for us, the ERGP was also helpful in the initial push, the same thing we're saying, influence. But the incubation was not there on the federal level. We've had to, as a company, go do many things in collaborating with where we could find identity, and this is why our Kano story is very important. Kano is the state of gold in Nigeria. We believe that Kano could be the Dubai of Africa. Not because they even produce it so much, but because they identify and they say gold is our thing. When we're doing all this, back to information, most of the miners that mine gold come from Zamfara State. I would say 95% with my eyes closed, they come from Zamfara State. Most of the sponsors or financiers in Nigeria for gold come from Kano State. Most of the gold will flow into Kano State. Most of anybody in the region trying to buy gold jewelry, anything will come into Kano State. So when we saw all the struggles we were having, we realized we just had to go to Kano. And what's interesting about Kano is it wasn't even so much with the state government holding our hand. It was going into the institutions and the associations and the people that held gold and identified with gold. And that's really been part of our success. So to summarize this, really, all the collaborations, as you can see, states, countries, without collaborations, nothing would have been possible.
Has the collaboration been actively offered to you, or have you had to tease it, fight it, beat it and steal it out of the states?
All day.
I think the point where we need to get to is where the states, recognize, based on, as His Excellency was saying, the issues, because investors give all of us feedback, whether you work in the public or private sector. And I believe unless they are not connected to their teams, the governors know where the issues are. So responding, before it becomes a big problem, I think is fantastic. Before I come to Carl, I want to go to His Excellency the Governor of Jigawa State. And I'm going to start with some material that I don't know whether you've seen, so I'm going to use this opportunity to give it to you. But on some work that had previously been done in 2021, Jigawa was identified as the second state, actually, in terms of ease of doing business in Nigeria. I found it fascinating that most people, did not know. Fabulous for, cluster farming, the largest producer of sesame, and the Megatari livestock market, which I don't know now, was regarded as the largest in Africa, was based in Jigawa. But when one looks at the numbers in terms of investment inflows, you don't see a correlation, and that's why I made the comment about ease of doing business and investment flows not necessarily joined. I wondered whether you'll share, with us your own perspectives in the few months that you've been, in the time that you've been in office, of what challenges investors have communicated, to you that are preventing these fabulous numbers in terms of ease of doing business and, the agrarian prospects of the state from translating into, active economic activity.
Thank you very much. Like you said, Jigawa State was second in the ease of doing business, and also we have the largest livestock market in West Africa. You see, these are potentials that we have in Jigawa State, and we feel there's also need to harness these potentials. Now, in terms of ease of doing business, we have doing a lot in terms of attracting investors. And the result is really becoming very clear. But the fact is, remain the same. As subnational levels, there are certain limitations that we have as a state. So, and that requires collaboration with the federal government, so as to ensure that these investors have also confidence and courage to be at the subnational level. Now, like we have a one-stop shop investment promotion company, that's Invest Jigawa. This is a full one-stop shop that an investor can come and do the Jigawa Investment Promotion Company can do everything for him. You don't need to go from this office to the next office to the next office. No. All you need to do is, once the investment promotion company has done an evaluation on the company and have done all that is required, and found that the company is good enough and is somebody that we need to collaborate with and do business with in Jigawa State, they will take over and do all the necessary activities, moving from this office to that office, moving from this, and ensure that the company has gotten exactly what he wants to do. If it is land, they will only, at the end of it, tell you that this is the grant, your grant. You don't need to go from to see the commissioner of land. You don't need to see any other person. But the investment company, the promotion company will do all that for you. So that has also helped us to do a lot. But like I said, when you are talking to investors, the major problem we have, and which we are trying to deal with this time, is the issue of energy. Energy is very, very critical. And also, because of now that the Electricity Act has given us a lot of advantage, that we will be able to generate power, and then through that we'll be able to deal with the issue of energy. But let me give you a specific example. Now, we have a sugar factory that have started in Jigawa State, a sugar processing company that has started in Jigawa State for the last 5 years. And we have been trying as much as possible to see how this investment materialize into fruition within a shortest possible time. But like I said, collaboration with the federal government is very, very important. We have a limitation. Now, this company, they require a license to draw water to their operational area. And that license has to be granted by the Federal Ministry of Water Resources. Now, for the last, in fact, since when I was the deputy governor for the last 4 years, I have been coming for meeting with the Federal Ministry of Water Resources. They will say, okay, we will give you a license, but all you do, you will not do open canal. What you do, you have to do fifing and all this. Now, but when we look at it, we put it on the table to the federal government. Look, we have a lot of farmers along that line. If we do open canal, we have agreed with this company that they will do out to grow a scheme, and also all the farmers along the line, they will be able to tap water and do their both rainy season farming. This will also encourage the farmers and also improve their own livelihood. We have put all this on the table, but the federal government insisted that you have to do fifing. Now, apart from the advantage we have with the open canal, we also have advantage in the sense that to the company that is doing the sugar factory, piping become more costly than open canal. So after they did their numbers, they saw that, okay, for them to recoup their investment when they do a piping, it will take them about 10 years. Well, if it is with the open canal, within 5 years, they can be able to recoup their investment. So as an investor, you have that is very, very important for you. Why is because government change and policy also change. There are policies, somewhat salt, and so many other things. So as an investor, I will make sure that, okay, I have a little period to recover my investment rather than a longer period. So that has been slowing the progress of that factory. In fact, in addition to that, so many other people, because we have a very fertile land for that matter, in Jigawa, there's nothing you cannot grow in Jigawa. That is why we have a lot of advantage. Investors like to come to Jigawa. But in most cases, this kind of collaboration that, between the federal government and then Jigawa State is very, very important. So I think that is one area where the federal government need to realize some of these things and then see the possibility of what can be done. Because if that company has taken place now, in fact, it will create more than 50,000 direct and indirect jobs in Jigawa State. And that is very, very important for us as a government. So I think collaboration is very, very important for us to move and then attract investors. But on our own side, like I said, we are doing all the best we can do to ensure that, but also, like I said, we have limitation. Collaboration is very, very important. Now, also this collaboration, we're also talking to our neighbors in like Yobe State, those that also use the water. And we all agree that, okay, even if they do open canal, they will not stop the water from going further to where they are going, where it is going. So, but the unfortunate thing, the federal government is one insisting, look, no, we cannot do open canal, we cannot do this, and some of the reasons we have given farmers for the purpose of acquiring their land for this project is that they will also be given parcel of land along the canal so that they can also continue with their normal farming. This is not forthcoming, and now the farmers are coming to say, look, we have an agreement with you, and now you are not fulfilling your agreement, so what is the position now? So, but we are managing the situation. But this is to emphasize also, okay, for you to attract investors at some national level, there are so many issues that needs to be taken into consideration. There are issues that has to do with the federal government. There are issues that has to do with your other neighbors as state. So that now, for example, our Megatari export processing zone, we have an export processing zone that if a dry container terminal, that place has been moribund for some times. But this period, I was able to meet NAFZA, we agree with the NAFZA, they went there. Then we agreed that, okay, we need to resuscitate this. And because we want to do that, we have decided to start talking to people in Yobe, people in Bauchi, and and also talk to our neighbors in Kano. Look, this container terminal will not reduce the inflow of people from Bauchi and Yobe that are coming to do business in Kano. So we all understood ourselves. And Yobe and Bauchi have agreed to start talking to the traders that, okay, if we can bring goods, you can bring your container to Megatari, right from wherever it is, the custom clearing will be done, everything will be done there, and the cost of, landing cost of the product will be cheaper. And then people can easily go and buy these goods. But we still have, again, we talked to NAFZA, we are still talking to federal government. Look, they said, okay, that export process zone has been there for about 5-7 years. You have not been paying the license. Okay, the license is an operational license. The fee you are paying operational fee. License is operation fee. This place has been more around for 5, 7, 8 years. You have not done anything, and then you have been asked also to pay the fees. So we are still negotiating again with the federal government, going back and front to get them understand that, look, let's pay at least 1 year license, let's continue with the business, unless the police come into full activities, then we know what to do. So these are some of the issues that normally draw us back in terms of attracting investors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency. We were going to discuss on the panel collaboration between states. Of course, you can't have collaboration between states if you don't have collaboration between the federal and the state. Since this summit is organized in partnership with the Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning, I hope somebody is taking notes about the specific issues that His Excellency has referred to, so that it can be attended to, quickly after the session. But this underscores, the reason why it may be difficult for the states to offer or to resolve, some issues, just like His Excellency Governor Sule said as well, some issues for states because they relate more to the relationship between, the federal and the state. But irrespective of the challenges, it is impossible for a business to be as successful as MTN Nigeria is without... Are we contesting that? Are we debating that? It is impossible for a business to be as successful as MTN Nigeria without actually, federal, state, and a multitude of parties, providing support. I can ask you to talk about the challenges, but I'd actually like you to tell us, what has worked for MTN. And the issues of big companies and the issues of small companies will be different. But for a company of your size, what has worked? And despite, your size, what issues do you still deal with in the States? If you want to share perspectives at federal level, nobody will hold it against you. They all promised beforehand that whatever you say will not be held against you. This is not being recorded. Once the session ends, everything will just disappear from the electronic records.
No, thank you very much, Your Excellencies. Thank you to the panel. What has worked? I think we, MTN and the telecommunications industry in Nigeria, the success can be accounted for by, I think, clarity of policy and good institution building in our primary regulator, the NCC. And what does it mean? First of all, the Nigerian Telecommunications Act and the policies of the NCCs give a sense of consistency and clarity, particularly in the early years where the aggressive investment happened in this industry. And the institution of the NCC was built. And how do you build an institution? You create a clear set of rules. You hold the institution itself accountable to those rules. You allow for the process of clarifications of rules through things like courts, etc., to establish precedents, and then you build a cadre of staff that has a lot of solid core competence in that area. And that is really what allowed the industry to thrive over the years. And made it a very attractive destination for investment. And capital, whether you look at it on an international level or on a regional level in states, capital will always flow to where the best return is. So that sort of makes it very simple, aside from the fact that it was virgin territory really in terms of the market, very few landlines, almost no mobile lines, etc., etc. So people were able to bring in their capital, get licenses, operate, expand, and you knew what your license regime was going to be like, renewal, new spectrum, etc., etc., etc. It's been challenging in the last few years. We're the tallest tree in the forest, so unfortunately we always optically look very, very successful, but that's somewhat hides the challenge. Well, one day you and I can discuss about the returns for investors. The top line is not necessarily the same as the bottom line. So the top line may seem very good, but when you look at the returns, the absolute returns in terms of dividends, that's actually declining year on year in the last few years or so, and quite aggressively so for a multiplicity of reasons, part of which is inflation, currency devaluation, the continuous investment we have to do, somewhere in the range of $500 to $700 million every year just to keep the networks going. So that's a challenge, but not a complaining session about MTN and the telecoms industry. What are the challenges that one faces? Consistency of policies. The same things that made us successful are the same things that we struggle with. Now going forward, consistency of policy across the country, in various states, so many multiple taxation layers that's hitting us. The share of our revenue that goes to government on a percentage basis keeps increasing year on year on year. And it's not just us, it's all industries and businesses, and of course, things like the currency issues, et cetera, et cetera. So what can states do? I think, first of all, on a regional basis, there are certain states, just by the nature of the natural resources that they have, can create clusters of investment and work in partnership within those states before we start to address the issues managing the federal, which is spoken about, the water canals, open canals, et cetera, et cetera. But within those states, as has actually been illustrated by the governors, work within those states to start to create clusters around agriculture, around mining, which gives an enabling environment and confidence to investors to come and invest in that area, knowing that it's not just the specific location that they're operating in, but border states, so that cross-movements of personnel, goods, services, et cetera, becomes a lot easier. In those kind of domains of economic activity, having a consistency of policy and having very strong institution building for things like your investment promotion company, et cetera, and the other mining, et cetera, commissions or ministries would give a lot of confidence to foreign investors. But I'll be amiss not to talk a little bit about what my industry can help in terms of developing states and the nation as a whole. One of the few ways, we all know that we have problems with transportation and power in particular, and power is going to affect the productivity of Nigeria into infinity. But the devolution of the authority to generate power, et cetera, into the states is going to help that tremendously, and a lot of off-grid solutions will. But the one thing that's going to increase the productivity of our nation, and of any state who elects to take that as a path to success, is digitization. Developing digital skills, creating an attractive investment environment for digital skills and digital investments into states, things like business process outsourcing, etc., is going to be a significant lever to develop states and the national economy. The economy of Thailand makes around $65 billion from business process outsourcing. India makes probably multiple times of that. And Indians themselves, when they visit Nigeria and they see the level of education, our fluency in English language, actually to some large extent, computer literacy, they always wonder why we haven't tapped into that. So I'm waiting for the first states to create an ICT park, and it's more than an ICT park where you put a few data centers, etc. I'm talking about a complete living environment where you allow limitless fiber to be deployed to those kind of locations, where you allow the first technology, the leading technology into those kind of locations, of course with the power infrastructure, etc., to attract investments, to attract data centers, to attract app developers, to attract all kinds of digital development, and particularly digital skills development into that state. There have been some success stories. Ekiti State was very liberal in terms of fiber, Kaduna State as well. But it comes in stops and starts. If there's not a consistency of those policies across the next administration, the corporate world doesn't have the predictability to say they're going to invest significantly on a long-term basis in those kind of locations. So there's a whole host of opportunities which can be tapped into. For us as advocates of telecommunications and migrating from a telecoms company to a technology company, we think there's massive opportunities, and we're just waiting for the states that are going to lead in this area, and they will attract a disproportionate amount of investment from our industry. I think I'll stop with that and give some time to...
Okay, thank you. I like the high you ended on, and looking for that state that will provide a platform, not necessarily just for the company, but for that industry to try to thrive. And BPO is one that has long been mentioned. There are a number of low-hanging fruits where a lot of the ingredients we need for success, already exist. But in engagements with investors, without question, you keep going back to, even though there's no direct correlation between ease of doing business and investment, you actually keep hearing the narrative about ease of doing business. You almost can't run away with it. There's no direct correlation. Otherwise, the World Bank doesn't publish the report on ease of doing business anymore. But I always used to make the analogy that the countries that had
There's a reason
the best,
for that.
Yes, and now I'm going to ask you too, if you don't mind, Chair. The countries that had the best rankings in terms of ease of doing business were not necessarily the countries that attracted the most capital. So it was Singapore right at the top of the list. But investors are looking for returns. Investors are looking for, on a risk-adjusted basis, where the returns, make sense for them. But we've invested a lot of effort in Nigeria, and I think for good reason. I see economic development and investment aggregation as one of those things that requires layering. You need a foundation, but that foundation is not the building. You need several layers before you can put the blockwork. You need to build the blockwork before you can put the windows, before you can have a building. But we need to have that foundation in place. And I know that in the work that was done on ease of doing business in Nigeria, and I find, and Bertine, perhaps you're best to comment on this, not because you did the report on ease of doing business. It was done by the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council. It was done across all 36 states and the FCT, and actually looks at what states are the best in terms of ease of doing business. As I said, there's not necessarily a correlation, but I think it's a fantastic place, to start, given where we're coming from. And I know that when that program, neared its end in terms of measuring ease of doing business, there was now a deliberate effort to try to address the challenges that we knew. A report provides the data, and I think it's important for states to work with data, not just anecdote. So that report provides some hard data, that states can work with. But on the back of that, the SABRE was then launched. That's the State Action on Enabling Business Reforms. And I know that the World Bank provided some support in getting that program put together. I find quite often when we talk about these World Bank assisted programs, it's very easy to say, is the World Bank's work? In the same way, that if I took money from a bank to build a house or to buy a house, it's still my house, even if the bank provided the funding. But as the banker that provided the funding, you understand my finances and how I got there. So it'll be useful for you to share, the SABRE, which ties performance with a value that the states get, essentially for doing some of the work for ease of doing business. Because that foundation is important. I'll repeat again, there's no direct correlation between ease of doing business and investment flow, but it is often and always mentioned by investors about the challenges they face with doing business. So that foundation needs to be addressed. And I wondered if you can, comment on the SABRE program and, the value that states get from actually improving the business environment. Probably useful for the business community to note that there's something in it for states, if you like, if they improve their business environment. Not just that they'll get investments, but they get something to continue to improve their business environment.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Yvonne, and everybody here this late in the evening and still
it's a full room.
Awake and listening. So now I think obviously being here on behalf of the World Bank, we're not here to actually implement any of these programs. Like the hard work gets done by the different government agencies, but we had a chance in the process of preparing a program like State Action for Business Enabling Reforms to be very close and to be a close partner in the thinking that went behind it, and that effort that was very much led by PEBEC with Dr. Jimoke, who was here earlier today. But it brought together the Federal Ministry of Finance, NGF, DMO, to really drive the thinking on how states could do more to attract investment. And we knew that the ease of doing business reforms, as we normally understand them, in terms of more the interface between the state and the private sector, are sort of some of the small things that make life of the business easier, but are not enough to make a business come into the state. So there was the thinking that this program had to do more than only the interface between government and the private sector and making that interface easier, and having some of the institutional reforms to really put in place the units in the state to be that place, the one-stop shop or other things on PPP, but to also look broader, and that's where the collaboration with the states came in. So SABRE wasn't designed just by somebody in the federal government with some support from the World Bank. It was designed together with the states, looking at some of the data, but also engaging with the different MDAs in the states to hear from them, also looking at the private sector feedback. So there was a broad partnership, because I think on anything what we're discussing today, there's basically 3 levels of collaboration. There's the collaboration between the states, there's the collaboration, the vertical one between the federal and the states and even the local governments. And then there's the collaboration between the private sector and the public sector. So all these 3 pieces of collaboration had to come together, and that's what the preparation process of SABRE tried to do. And I think on any economic initiative in Nigeria that you would want to do, that is whether it's around a value chain, whether it's about a trade corridor, or whether it's around any big policy framework, you would need to establish those different areas of collaboration. I see His Excellency just joined us, so maybe.
Yes, I noticed His Excellency, the Chairman of the Governors Forum, has joined us. But Your Excellency, we're going to save your comments for the end, so you can listen to the conversations, and then you provide the closing remarks before we close. Sabine, I'm going to stay with you for a minute and just ask you to share with us some global perspectives. You've heard examples of federal and state collaboration or not, where federal has supported and where federal has not enabled the way the states expected. What examples can you share with us that you've seen from other countries where collaboration, perhaps between countries? I mean, I find that the competition for capital is real. We either compete Nigeria with neighbors, Nigeria with other countries, or we compete in the states to strengthen our hands, or even better, collaborate between the states to strengthen our hands. But what examples can you share? If you can share your perspectives on where you've seen this work in other countries.
Yeah,
What's really driven it?
Well, I think if you want to look at learnings for Nigeria, we want to look at federal systems, right? Complex ones. So there's not that many in the world, but I've worked in, I think, 3 of the large federal countries. So other than Nigeria, I also worked in India and Indonesia. And I think what you see in these large, complex countries where you have a level of federal and state dynamics is that the ingredients for that kind of collaboration either come from a very strong policy drive, but which requires a lot of negotiation and everything. And I'm thinking of some of the tax reforms that happened in India and that got rid of a lot of the differences in different state tax regimes and made all of that be unified at the central level. Not at the central level in the sense that all the resources only go to the federal level, but in the sense of having a unified system that would apply in the same way everywhere. That wasn't an easy system to introduce because obviously some states are transit states, other states are more producing states, other states have ports. And that means that, and I think that's one of the things of why collaboration is so hard, is that the benefits of this collaboration are not going to be shared equally. And also the costs will not be equal. And I think that's where the federal can come in. Because if you're the transit state, you have to invest in transport, yet it will be the producing states that will see the value addition happen in their state. So I think in the case of India, there was a lot of negotiation between the different levels of government and also an understanding from the private sector that the burden of the different levels of taxation became so cumbersome for the private sector that in the way the country had become different countries, right? Like each state acted as, like the borders were so thick that the thickness of borders in a federal country actually made you lose the benefits of being such a large country and having a lot of value chains that can actually operate in your own country because you're so large. So I think that's one of the learnings from India. I think another learning that might be interesting for Nigeria and where obviously the politics is different, but is where the sort of the matching of the pooling of financing. So in Nigeria, there's a tendency to distribute federal resources according to the political zones and each state equal. And some of that is anchored into the constitution. But there's also some opportunity for flexibility and results-based financing and ways where the federal government could put its financial or policy weight behind a subset of states that are trying to do the right thing, but where some states might need to invest more than what they could carry on their own, but other states would benefit from it, and you would see impact at the national level, right? And I think the federal government can justify this kind of incentives if you would do that. And this was something that was very common in Indonesia, where the subnationals, which were actually the powerful subnationals, were not the provinces, but at the district level, so one layer down. But there were often agreements made or even MOUs signed between the central government and the district ones about if you invest in these smaller roads, then we will invest in the larger federal road that connects it. So this was like a joint understanding of where you would prioritize your financing so that you don't get large infrastructure invested in one place, yet the connecting roads aren't there, or the operations and maintenance investments or budgets haven't been allocated. And these kind of efforts, I think, can be possible in Nigeria as well. But I think both these examples haven't been fully maximized in the context of Nigeria, and I think there's a lot of opportunities to do so with the current administration really wanting to see economic growth driven by private sector take off at a much higher level.
Thank you. We definitely want to see economic growth driven by the private sector. There's a constitutional requirement, in fact, for economic development to be spread almost equally between the states. And the interpretation of that, if you read it literally, can suggest you treat all states equally in terms of financial disbursement, or it can require more creative engagement to make sure that even if value flows in one direction, you can connect the dots with the subsequent states. I want to make sure that we don't get lost in our own world discussing on the panel. I'm conscious of the time. So I'd like to throw this to the audience to see if we can take a couple of questions. Before we round off the session, we're going to have the chair of the session, His Excellency, the Governor of Kwara State and Chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, essentially round off the discussion. So what you'd have pitched at the beginning, you'll be pitching to us at the end. And I'm going to wish you luck with it, not having heard the bulk of the conversations that we had. But it is, it's important that we will take a few questions from the audience. We haven't, dug in as much as I'd have liked into, we've had, I suppose, examples of what is possible, but it'll be useful to take a few questions from the audience and see if that can help tease out some. Yes. There's one hand here. So that's one. There's two right at the back. While the microphone is going to him, if I can just make the comment about the Nigerian Governors Forum. It wasn't...
My question actually was going to touch on that.
On the Governors Forum?
Yes.
Okay.
So maybe if I let you speak, you might have asked and answered the question, so I might as well go ahead. Thank you very much, the panel. This has been really stimulating. And one common theme I have found in all the submissions...
Sorry, you didn't tell us your name.
My name is Teso Boswa. I work for Standard Chartered Bank. One common theme which I have found amongst the submissions by most speakers is that of a lack of proper interface between several government agencies and governments. That synergy doesn't exist, so it seems. Would it be asking for too much if the Nigerian Governors Forum goes back to the drawing board and establishes a policy coordination unit like what we have in the presidency now? What's your reaction to that?
Okay, so I was going to say, I'm happy you asked the question. I should wait for the second one and not jump the gun in case he has something similar. But I can answer the question without involving the Governors Forum based on my own experience of dealing with the Governors Forum. Sorry? No, I was going to answer the question. I wasn't going to pass it to the chairman. I was going to answer the question based on my own experience. And the chairman can enrich, based on his own. But if we take the second question, and then I'll comment in case they're related.
It's at the back somewhere.
There wasn't a lady. It was... Okay. So while, that's being dealt, I found the Nigeria Governors Forum, from my interaction with them as a government official, you'd assume that as a public servant, engagement with other public officers should be easy. You should just snap your fingers and it should happen, but it doesn't. I found, though, that in anything that involved more than a handful of states, that it was better to involve the Nigeria Governors Forum. They actually have the capacity. It serves as a peer learning platform. It serves as an experience sharing platform. It serves as a support platform. And in many ways, there were many problems that I solved faster in engaging the governors without question. If you want to engage more than one or two governors, it's better to go through the Nigeria Governors Forum. So they have platforms like that. But the electoral cycle runs every 4 years. So when new governors come, about one in 3 governors is new. It will take some time to bring everybody up to the same level. But the Nigeria Governors Forum exists as a continuum as governors come and go. So educating, peer learning, support, and collective development, they do as one. But the chairman of the Governors Forum is here. He will have a better answer than that. This is just based on my own experience. The lady at the back.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Hassana Bello Aliyu. I work for a company called Connexa, and I'm an NESG Bridge Fellow. So my question is, how much thought and how much effort do states put into branding and establishing a brand for the state? Because a lot of the times when you think about northern states, the things that come to mind, insecurity, Boko Haram, out-of-school children, Almajiris, religious intolerance. That is what comes to mind when people think about the North. So how much work are you doing on rebranding so you can attract investment, and not just to traditional manufacturing kind of businesses, but from tourism as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Hassana. There was another hand. We'll take that last question.
Good afternoon. My name is St. Collins Weke, CEO of CTV Limited. I want to thank the Nigeria Economic Summit Group for the theme of this year's Economic Summit. And I believe that everyone here has the interest of this nation at heart. But we must address, just like, my question is just similar to what the last person said. We must hit the nail at the head. No investor wants to invest in a country where...
Sorry, can you ask your question, please, St. Collins?
Okay.
Thank you.
My question is all about security. I heard the governor of Nasarawa State made mention of his partnership with the neighboring states and all that. But it's not all about partnership. Because if there is nothing on ground and an investor's investment is not protected, no investor is willing to come and invest. Because I know, I'm talking by experience, I know a lot of investors that want to invest, but because
Thank you, St. Collins. So your question is about security.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So there are three questions. The first one is about the Nigeria Governors Forum. I've commented, but the chairman of the NGF will do justice to the question. Hassana Bello asked about the effort that goes into branding when you think of northern states in particular, and the negative narrative. And then St. Collins' question is about security. Your Excellency, do you want to take that, Governor Sule?
Other one actually was directed at me, saying that I spoke about collaboration, but there has to be more on ground that collaboration. So I think that's a direct question, and it's good for him to understand. Even if I know what the Nigerian Governors Forum is doing, I will not say anything because the chairman has the opportunity to speak, so he can speak on that. I think it's better I allow that to happen. But as far as the issues of the security is concerned, like you rightly mentioned, I mean, this is not an event where anybody is given 15 minutes to make presentation. We are just talking in a snappy what happens. So, and I will give you a very good example. There were certain places in Nasarawa State that were no-go areas as a result of security challenges. Now, we attracted the third mobile police training college in the country, to one of those locations. And that's what actually dislodged some of these security people. We established, today I was telling you about the biggest single lithium manufacturing company that is going to be processing 18,000 metric tons per annum. Where they are sitting right now is where, again, in Udege, we used to have the biggest security challenge. We attracted a military super camp to that particular location, and that's the only thing that opened, because anywhere there is mining, there is insecurity. I think the lady doing gold will tell you that, even though I don't think she goes to the security places. But, so because if she was, I will have met her one time, at one of those locations. So I think those are the kind of challenges that we have. If you know the amount the governors are actually investing in security, even if police, military, and the rest of that. But it is not something for the governors to come out and say that we are the one funding this, funding that, funding this, funding that. But we are spending so much into those areas. So, of course, if we have not been doing that, you will not be seeing what it is. Luckily for me, just a few years back, I was on the other side, with you. I was actually on the side of the investors, and I remember we have been to so many countries, with Dangote. Dangote today is in about 15 different countries in Africa alone. So I was there when we went to, for instance, one of the countries, I wouldn't mention the name, and we went in there because of a policy. After putting all the efforts, in that, we had to withdraw completely because the policy was not going to be conducive. So what I learned from that, and we're applying in Nasarawa State, is it is not just the policy that we have for this administration. No, we are backing some of those policies in order to attract investment with the legal framework. There is law established by the House of Assembly that no governor is just going to come tomorrow and say, get away with that. He has to live by the law. So we establish some of those laws to do that. Even in a PPP arrangement, we make sure that we are backing it, with the law from the House of Assembly, that is backed by that, so that nobody will just get up one day and say that I don't like that policy. Because there is a difference between just a policy of an administration that sometimes is just a pronouncement of a governor, than to say, something that is backed by a House of Assembly law, well established and signed, that nobody can just get up and take care of it and push it aside. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Neri, thank you, Your Excellency, for providing the context.
So I'm going to respond a bit to His Excellency as a joke. Worry doesn't carry last, and that's where I'm from. So let me tell you that the mines we go to, in fact, sometimes security, they say, Madam, we're not going with you. So my last insecure place, Chiku Biringwari, we enter. Anka, we enter. Munya, we enter. We enter well. Not often, and I'll be frank, a lot of times we pray. Not every time. We have to pray before we go. But sometimes I pray and I don't feel led to go, security or not, and we hear bad stories. But what I want to say about security is I actually believe that when we have more collaboration with states in mining, there'll be less insecurity. And let me tell you why. For example, we were in Zamfara for years. The only insecurity we had then really was cattle rustling. Same thing in Biringwari when we're doing work for Kaduna Mining Development Company. It was really cattle rustling. It became something else. Now, honestly, the insecurity got worse when they banned the mining in Zamfara, but that's another story. But my opinion is, I look at what happened in Kaduna. By the time Kaduna state government was trying to clear out the bandits that were disturbing Biringwari and Chiku for mining, they moved them, the bandits moved themselves into Munya local government in Niger State. Now they are there, in Zazaga, where we mine. They migrated into Niger. Now Niger is stuck. This problem started because they came from Kaduna State. But if all the states were working in collaboration, mining, there will be no hiding place for these guys because they are hiding in the bush where people are mining. But if suddenly, if we have this concerted effort, I really believe that that's part of the solution for insecurity, having more states in collaboration mining. Like I said about the geology, the mineral corridor, looking at the schist belt, looking at where the pegmatites are going, all the way, Kwara, all the work we've done. Like I said, there's really very few states that we don't know well. The solution is this. Even back to the collaboration, the solution also is having, I was alluding to it with places like Kano. A lot of these minerals that we need in Nigeria, there's states that have the money that will fund. Not necessarily the government, but individuals and institutions. Those collaborations are already there. There's no way any other state or company wants to do something in gold mining in Nigeria. If you isolate Kano, you will fail because Kano will sabotage you. So already, you can't do anything in gold in Nigeria if you're not going to collaborate with Kano. So I really see that insecurity, a big solution, is collaboration with the states in mining. They are hiding in the bush where the minerals are. When the states get together in working, they'll get out.
Thank you. Thank you. Before I hand over to the chair, I will give you a rough cut of the comments that have been made, so it'll help you in closing the session. So, very, very many thanks to all of you. So the single biggest lithium manufacturing facility is on the table in Nasarawa State. And we have to make sure that when the 30th edition of Nigerian Economic Summit is held, we get feedback on how that is going. Whatever is required, whatever support they need, I believe, we should provide, whether it is between the states or with the federal. There isn't enough collaboration, clearly, between the states, although we have heard many examples of where this is working. But where security, and security has been mentioned by more than one person, so I'm going to hop on that there is insufficient collaboration in relation to security. If there was more collaboration, there will be less security. So the issue is not about pushing them from one state to the next one, but about the states working together to deal with the security issue, because it doesn't know state boundaries. In the same way that investments don't know state boundary. While many states have done, there's obviously always a lot more that can be done, but many of the challenges that the states face actually require collaboration with the federal government. So it's not just between the states, it's with the state and the federal government. And not surprisingly, the same things that have made businesses successful are the issues invariably that they struggle with, when they struggle with them. The Jigawa state governor talked about an investment that could have created 50,000 jobs. That would be direct and indirect. 50,000 jobs in Jigawa state will change many things. And I think, this one will also be an important success for the summit to claim as having facilitated in enabling. A lot of ingredients that are required come from a strong policy drive. And there needs to be better interface between the states and between the states with the agencies and with the federal government. I know from my own practical experience, from my own lived experience about the value of the Nigeria Governors Forum. So I think it is a fantastic platform for you as chairman of the NGF to round this up with a comment that puts this in context. Thank you.
Excellencies, Executive Governor of Nasarawa State, Executive Governor of Jigawa State, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Well, apologize, I came in late. I had to attend the meeting of the summit for deputy governors. That also shows you a pointer to the cooperation we have within subnationals. Well, from what I can see, there's too much concentration at the center. The private sector concentrates more, engages more with the federal government. There's less engagement with the subnationals. And when I say subnationals, not just limited to states, you also have the local governments there as well. The NGF would like to see better collaboration with private sector. We meet every third Wednesday of the month. Any company, corporation can come in and talk to 36 governors at the same time. Last two meetings lasted for 5 hours. The last meeting we had 5 ministers on board and a few private sector companies. So if I go to Mr. Boso's question, yes, the NGF is a one-stop shop to reach all of us. And we built a synergy there. We have a strong secretariat. And whatever your requirements are, we'll meet it there. On the matter of security, as you know, that's on the exclusive list is federal government, but the states have to do what they need to do. so do the local governments. For example, Kwara, Oyo, and Niger are collaborating heavily on security. Luckily, the 2nd Division of Nigerian Army covers Oyo, Kwara, and part of Niger State. And we've interacted with the GOC. He's been there a few times. We're spending state funds to improve security in those areas. Oyo and I initially met. We took the State Executive and Security Council from Kwara to Oyo State, and we met. And we quickly realized that if we don't stem the tide of insecurity from Niger, it's going to filter down to Kwara, Oyo, Osun State. So we've been meeting those challenges in terms of security. Now, let me congratulate the governor of Nasarawa State for being able to invite a big investment. As you know, lithium is an energy transition, energy of the future, and that's where Nigeria should really focus on now. Three governors, Oyo, Niger, and myself also met the minister last week for mining, as Minister for Solid Minerals, to present the position of the states. Because part of this insecurity is caused by the fact that states do not know the companies mining in the states. Companies get the licenses in Abuja and just go to the states and do the operations. So we really don't know who is operating in our backyard. So those are the things we met on to try and sort those out. Once we can sort those out, then we know, we bring up policies on how to keep out non-state actors, because most of the time these non-state actors are protecting the miners. And that in itself is a big problem for us. But by and large, our focus will be to engage. You see, we have not even had a mining company come to address the forum at all. No investor in the mining sector has really come to address it.
Refinery.
You did?
A gold, yes.
Everything.
Sorry?
Yeah, because we consulting, we're primarily in gold, but we're also a mineral consulting company. So we helped form the Kaduna Mining Development Company and Midway Mineral Development Company in Kwara. We were involved with them in 2016 as well.
Okay, so that's the point.
That's part of what you missed, Your Excellency.
No, that's what I was saying. I said the mining companies have not come to address the forum.
Okay.
To address the governor's forum. To say this is the interest, this is how they want to collaborate with the states. This is the laws, amendments they want the governors to push with the federal government on that issue. Now, in collaboration between states, subnationals, there's a lot of it going on. For example, the lake rice between Kebbi and Lagos State, which has given birth to the biggest rice mill in Nigeria, for starters. Now, we deepened that. Kwara went to Lagos State and said we wanted to be the #1 beef supplier to Lagos State. And Lagos said, okay, hang on, let's think about it. And then Lagos decided to build a food logistics hub. It's going to be ready next year. It's 120 hectares in Ekpe. This program involves Kwara, Niger, and Taraba, not just for beef supply only, but vegetable, grains, and so on. So you're going to have a huge food logistics supply center in Lagos, which we will feed into. This is part of the collaboration we're talking about. And at the end of the day, you see traders from nearby states or Oyo Ekiti going into Lagos to buy food commodities because of the economies of scale we expect to bring down the prices. Another example of cooperation is between Kwara again and Oyo State. Oyo is arguably the largest producer of cashew in Nigeria. And we've gone into collaboration with Oyo State to set up a cashew processing zone. And hopefully in the next 2 years, you'll see that. So it's an industrial park for cashew processing in that area. Nigeria produces about 250,000 tons of cashew, and over 80% of that is exported. So the idea is to make sure we we produce all our cashew in Nigeria. That's a target we're aiming for in that processing zone. And in the same principle, we're saying governors have decided, and we've met the president to say we must ban the export of raw lithium ores. Lithium must be processed in Nigeria. So very soon, a pronouncement will be made on that. On branding, well, we just have to rely on soft power, because no matter how much work you do on branding, once there's 1 or 2 kidnappings, the state is labeled. So we just concentrate on soft power, passing the messages through. Little things like state of harmony and the number plate of a car, to festivals like Arugungu Festival, and so on, Kanu Doba, Zaria Doba. So those are the things we use to propel the states and to sell the states in most cases. But we'll deepen our work in security. We also collaborate on water transportation between Kwara, Niger, and Kogi states, but we're also pushing the federal government to dredge the River Niger, because it's an albatross for us all in Nigeria. We have a lot of internally displaced people due to the flood. And then the Sunti Sugar Factory and Bachi Tea Factory really can't work because most of the lands there are flooded. So we are collaborating in water transportation at the main time. Now, part of deepening investment and collaboration, I think this summit too should rotate between states. Because if you have all the businessmen here today, if this meeting is holding in Ibadan today, then you see a lot more businessmen will be interested in what is happening in Oyo State, the opportunities in Oyo State. But if you stick in Abuja, we come year in, year out to discuss in Abuja. We're doing the same thing all over again. So let's try and move it around the states. So by and large, the Governors Forum is open for business. We're ready to collaborate. There's a lot of peer review amongst us to deepen what we do. It's not just engagement with the federal government, but with also donor agencies. Now, donor agencies of recent would rather work with the states than the federal government because they believe and understand it is you go to the people better through the states. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for ending on a high with specific examples of what states are doing together to promote investment and deal with the challenges that they collectively face. I have been asked by the forum organizers to make an announcement. Anybody who stayed till the end of this session, as very many of you have done, you can collect a voucher from me at the end. You're entitled to double portion for dinner. You will be served double the main course. I truly believe that the magic of the federation happens in the states. I truly believe that the magic of the federation happens in the states. And I think it is fantastic that we have a forum, where the states have an opportunity to talk about the challenges that they face, but more importantly, the successes that they are recording and the things that they have in the works. I hope notes have been taken about the investments that they require federal support for, so that hopefully next year, wherever the summit will be held, at the 30th edition, you will give us some feedback. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellency, thank you very much for throwing the challenge at the NESG and saying, to remind you that in 2017, both the NESG and the Nigerian Governors Forum established the NNER, which is NESG,
NGF meeting. And this routine going about was something we agreed, but putting life to it had been very difficult. We're even ready to do a lot of factor endowment studies for the states. So what you were talking about, even mineral resources, were things I will have done with you. I want to take the challenge that at your next 1 or 2 summits, you will call NESG in so that we can bring this to life, and so that apart from this national summit, we can be doing the regional summits. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Our session is done. Don't forget your vouchers for the second plate at dinner is with me. Thank you.